As their pants for stream of water, my soul pants for you, my God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. Where can I go and meet with God? Last week, I was listening to what people talk about after the sermon. So I titled the sermon, Deer in the Garden. Most of them have watched deer. They're beautiful animals. They move quietly through the woods. They seem gentle and harmless. Early in the morning, or just before dark, they step into fields and gardens, almost unnoticed. If you ever planted a garden, you know that seeing a deer nearby can bring two different emotions. At first, you admire it and its beauty. Then you remember what it came to do. Overnight, a healthy garden can become a patch of breakfast stems, distant vegetables, trimmed plants. The garden doesn't hate the deer. The deer is only doing what comes natural. But the garden loves the garden because of the time, the work, and the care that went into it. Our lives are much like that garden. God has planted seeds in each of us. He has planted faith, hope, love, joy, peace, patience, and spiritual gifts. But just as a garden attracts deers, a growing Christian attacks spiritual attacks. Christian attracts spiritual attacks. Today, I want us to look at the deer from two different perspectives. One, the deer represents that souls that long for God. The other represents things that quietly creep into our lives and destroy what God has planned. The deer longs for water. David says, and the deer pants for a stream of water. The word pants paints a picture of a deer exhausted from running, desperately searching for water. Hunters tell us that when a deer has been chased, finding water becomes its highest priority. David says, that is how I feel about God. Not, I would like to see God. Not, I hope to spend time with God, but I cannot live without Him. There's a tremendous difference between wanting God and depending upon Him. Most people seek God only when tragedy strikes. They pray when doctor gives them bad news. They pray when money runs short. They pray when relationships fail. But David sought God every day. His soul was thirsty. God speaks of living water. Jesus stood at the festival at the Feast of Tabernacles and cried, if any man thirst, let him come unto me and drink. Jesus wasn't talking about physical water. He was talking about spiritual satisfaction. The word offers many ways: success, popularity, money, pleasure, entertainment. But the world will eventually run dry. Only Jesus gives living water. Have you ever noticed that people who seem to have everything often still feel empty? Because every soul was created for God. Nothing else can fill that place. Question for you. When was the last time you couldn't wait over the Bible? When was the last time prayer came joyfully instead of pain? When was the last time tears filled your eyes simply because you were in God's presence? The thirsty soul is a healthy soul. Every garden represents work. Nobody accidentally grows a beautiful garden. Can you just throw seeds down and have a beautiful garden? Every tomato, every bean, every squash, every flower represents our labor. First, the ground must be broken. Then the biggest thing I did as a kid, every rock had to be removed. Then every weed has to be pulled. Then seeds happen. Then water. And then you have only after months of work does the harvest come. Likewise, spiritual maturity doesn't happen overnight. God heals our hearts. Sometimes that process hurts. He removes the rocks of pride. He pulls the weeds of bitterness. He plants his words deep inside of us. Sometimes we wonder why God allows difficult seasons. Because gardens are prepared before they produce fruit. I will repeat that. Gardens are prepared before they produce fruit. A garden always attracts visitors. A neglected garden rarely attracts deer. But one filled with fresh vegetable does. Likewise, Satan is interested in empty lives. He targets the fruit of Christian. When you fail begins to serve God, expect opposition. How many times you feel like that? When something's going good, you know something around the corner. When the church begins growing, expect spiritual warfare. When your prayer life deepens, expect temptation. The devil hates growth because growth glorifies God. Peter warned us, be sober and diligent, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walking without, seeking whom he may desire to devour. Enemy studies believers the way the deer studies the garden. He looks for weak spots, an open gate, a broken fence, neglected areas. Little bites become a big loss. Overnight, one deer, just a few bites, doesn't seem serious. But return every night for a month, harvest disappears. Spiritually, destruction usually comes little by little. Miss one Sunday, neglect one prayer, one compromise, one unforgiving spirit, one careless conversation, just one simple matter. Soon faith very weak. Song of Solomon says, take us the foxes, little foxes that spoil the vines. Sometimes little sins become giant because we ignore them. The devil doesn't always destroy suddenly. He destroys gradually. What's eating your garden? Every Christian should ask honestly these questions. Is worry eating my peace? Is bitterness eating my joy? Is unforgiveness eating my love? Is greed eating my generosity? Is pride eating my humility? Is business eating my time with God? And that's the biggest one. Is business eating time with God? I've all become busy throughout life, trying to help others, trying to do different things. But business can take your time if you have God. Sometimes we blame the devil for things we simply neglect. We simply neglect. If you never watered your garden, don't blame the deer because nothing's growing. God has provided everything you need for spiritual growth. The question is whether you're tending. Building spiritual fence. Farmers know the value of things. The value of things deserve protection. That's why they build fences. Not because they hate wildlife, because they value what's inside. Christians need spiritual fences. Guard what you watch. Guard what you hear. There's a lot of things on TV and on radio that we don't need to hear. Guard the influences that's on your children. Guard your marriage. Guard your testimony. Paul said, neither give place to the devil. Notice he didn't say the devil can take place. He said, don't give him place. Every compromise opens the gate. Every act of obedience strengthens things. The gardener never stops working. Let's ask Susan, her husband, always at the garden. One encouraging truth is this: the garden never quits after one bad season. Late frost comes, they plant again. Storms could store the crop, they plant again. Deer eats vegetables, they plant again. Because hope always plants another seed. God is the greatest gardener. You may have failed, your family may have wandered, your heart has grown cold, but God hasn't given up. He still plants, he still waters, he still forgives, he still restores. Joel declared, I will restore you the years that the locust has eaten. Only God can restore wasted years. Jesus is the master gardener. When Mary Magdalene came to the tomb, she thought Jesus was the gardener. John tells us she was mistaken, yet spiritually, she was absolutely right. Jesus is the gardener. He prunes us. John 15 says, every branch is pruned so it will bear more fruit. Pruning hurts, don't it? God cuts away pride, selfishness, sins, and distractions. Not to harm us, but to make us more fruitful. Sometimes we ask, Lord, why did you remove that from my life? Because the gardener always knows what branches are needed. Then we need to stay close to the water. Deers instinctively stay close to water because they know life depends on it. Christians who live near the stream of God's grace. Stay near prayer. Stay near God's word. Stay near faithful believers. Because being in a close bond with other believers helps us feel their spiritual hurt. And stay near Jesus. The farther we wander from the water, the weaker we become. Jeremiah rebuked Israel because they had forsaken the fountain of living water. Those broken cisterns that could have hold no water. Don't trade God's river for the world of empty wells. The greatest garden ever planted, the first garden in the Bible was Eden. Sin still entered. The greatest garden in the New Testament is Gethsemane. There Jesus surrendered himself completely to the Father's will. Another garden filled with fire tomb where Jesus was buried. And on the third day, the garden became a place where death was defeated. Because Jesus rose from the grave, there is hope for every broken heart. If your spiritual garden seems barren today, remember that God specializes in bringing light and places. Every